it is a pleasure to see you in this project of the Social Research Center. Because your work and today's topic are actually quite connected, when we pay attention to your career, the fact that you worked as the ambassador of the European Union in Egypt, and especially your research on the Middle East, is very valuable to us. And by the way, the terror attack that took place yesterday in Brussels, where you live, I guess, really saddened us. And let us state that the terrorist incident that took place in Brussels yesterday was a very criminal act, and we hope that such terror attacks will not occur in Europe again, ever. We have a few questions for you today, and these questions will be about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that ignited the war in the Middle East. So, which side do you think the recent events benefited the most? Did Hamas really think that it could achieve something with these attacks? First question will be like that.
Frankly, I think neither side has benefited. I think there has been a setback for Hamas, miscalculated pretty badly on this one, it seems to me. Their calls for a wider campaign have largely fallen on deaf ears, although it can't be excluded yet. Of course, there are problems up on the northern border, Israel-Lebanon. But I don't think that it's going to move into a wider frame, which is one of the objectives, I guess, that Hamas would have had in launching these attacks. And secondly, they've lost an awful lot of support, both amongst their own people, especially in the West Bank, but in the wider world. I think in the Arab world in particular, never very sympathetic to Hamas, with the exception of one or two countries. But the brutality of what they did is such that I think it's gone beyond the pale, so they don't gain. On the other hand, the Israelis, a lot of sympathy for them, of course, everywhere, and for the losses that they've had. But on the other hand, we have to acknowledge that this doesn't come out of the blue. The right-wing Netanyahu government that came in 10 months ago has been particularly aggressive to the Palestinians in the West Bank, and indeed in Gaza. It's been that way for a long time. And one might have expected some sort of conflagration to occur. Nothing on this level, it must be said. Nobody foresaw this, the intensity of the violence and so on. But there has been a lot of provocation going on for the last 6-9 months in the West Bank. And of course, the presence of far-right extremists in the Netanyahu government, people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, certainly hasn't helped things at all. And Netanyahu himself is going to be in serious trouble at some point, because, of course, somebody has to carry the can for the intelligence failures. They didn't see it coming, they should have done, and so on. And so on all sides, and of course you have the tragedy, above all, of the two peoples, 1,400 plus dead in Israel, 3,000 Palestinians now dead. Nobody gains from this.
As you know, some Western political scientists viewed Azerbaijan's gaining full sovereignty over its own territory as a result of the latest local anti-terrorism operations held in Karabakh as an event that Iran didn't want. Israel is a country that has very good relations, both diplomatically with Azerbaijan also. Do you think the recent events were a message from Iran? Like, it's not a speculation or miscalculation, or let's say calculation by me or other ones in our center, but I have read a lot of articles on that situation, which says that Iran is showing its power on this Israeli region. Do you think so?
No,
is that the truth?
No, I don't think so. Iran is certainly a factor insofar as it provides material support for Hamas, weaponry, and also finance and so on is given by Iran. And we all know that Iran's agenda, of course, is extremely anti-Israel. But one should never jump to conclusions about who does what in the Middle East.
Of course.
I'm pretty sure that the Hamas leadership has been planning this for a good long time. And they've certainly been using the Iranian support, but I don't think that Iran has had a lead role, and I'm almost certain that they would not have inspired or at least directed in any way this attack from Hamas. No, this is essentially a faction within the Palestinian movement, very powerful faction, which has been looking to push back on Israel, especially in recent months, for the reasons that I gave, for quite some time. So Iran, I think, is a secondary factor in all of this. I wouldn't overdo it.
Okay. And the next question will be, what should Israel do after all these events? Like currently it is fighting with different groups almost everywhere, in the air, on land, at sea. We saw a lot of footage has been shared by Israeli Defense Forces on social media accounts. Do you think this war will soon start the era of all-out Middle East wars with the participation of Lebanon, Iran, and similar countries? As we know, Syria is also being bombed right now.
Yeah, I mean, you never know in the Middle East, of course. We've seen a lot
it's
of
open
that
to speculations, right?
50 years, a lot of speculation going on.
Yes.
Somehow, I don't think so. As I said earlier, I can't see this leading to a major regional war. And don't forget, there was for quite some time, and probably will be again, beyond the Netanyahu government, because I don't think that Netanyahu will survive this politically, but there is a longer-term trend, so-called normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab world, which was going reasonably well for them until this happened. With 4 so-called Abraham Accords, with Bahrain, with the Emirates, with Sudan, with Morocco, and of course the famous talks with Saudi Arabia, which are in the freezer now, and will stay in the freezer for quite some time to come. But there is a strategic interest on both sides in that relationship, in those relationships, and I think at some point they'll come back to them. And of course, at the same time, we shouldn't forget, there are peace treaties in place with Egypt and Israel, and Jordan and Israel. But I frankly, so long as the Netanyahu government or something like it stays in power, none of these are going to advance, and especially after these events in the near term. Longer term, those interests still are there. So this mitigates against a major conflict between the Arab world and Israel. As for Iran, Iran, of course, is aggressive towards Israel, but I think it knows very well how far it can go. And I don't think that they're going to want to be taking on the Americans anytime soon, because if the Iranians were to do that, it would drag in American power, and indeed with probably Europe supporting it, supporting the Americans as well. So again, overall, could be wrong, probably will be wrong. Everybody's wrong in the Middle East.
Yes.
But very few people ever get it right, if any of them. But I don't see a major regional conflict occurring. I do see a deterioration in the short, medium term in any trend towards peace. As for the fundamental issue, which is the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory, one would hope desperately that we could get back to that. But again, so long as the Netanyahu government or something like it is in power, that's just not possible.
My last question will be about Turkey. How do you evaluate the current position of Turkey in this conflict?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey finds itself sort of in the middle. They're trying to restore good relations with Israel on the one side, we know that. At the same time, of course, they are a supporter, or at least a sympathizer, with many elements, maybe not all, but many elements within Hamas. There is a strong relationship going way back to the days of the Muslim Brotherhood. We shouldn't forget that Hamas, formed in the 80s, grew out of the Brotherhood back then, of course, and that is a movement which is essentially supported by Turkey.
Yes.
It's not for nothing that Hamas leaders continue to reside in Turkey, on Turkish territory, and will continue to do so, I'm sure. But Turkey will be careful here, I think. Again, it's trying to put itself forward as a mediator. I'm not sure that's going to work. There's only one outside power. With all due respect to Europe, which I would love to see do more, but there's only one outside power that can play that role, and that is the United States. And I'm not sure that the US, even with Biden going there now, is going to be committed to any sort of real moves towards peace. Ceasefire, maybe, but I can't see at the moment, given the situation also back in America, presidential elections coming next year and all the rest of it, I can't see them deviating from essentially their rather one-sided support for Israel. And so long as you have this complete imbalance between, on the one hand, the Israelis and on the other, the Palestinians, prospects for any longer-term peaceful solution remain pretty dim, I'm afraid.
as you point out that the US elections, just a brief answer would be okay. Look, this is going to be the last one. But in case of Trump's winning of the elections, do you see any change of America's actions towards current situations in maybe Ukraine and also Israel? Is there going to
be if anything, and if that nightmare should occur,
Trump's winning,
it will be, for Europeans in particular, it will be a nightmare. It should happen, but it could happen. It can only get worse in terms of the one-sidedness of the American position. We know Trump's approach to the region. We saw it in his first term, last term, we hope. Could be a second term, who knows? We saw that, and I think that that would actually put the prospects for any longer-term peaceful solution, return to two-state, one-state, whatever it might be, extremely unlikely if Trump were to be re-elected. And in fact, the overall situation in geopolitical sense will only get more tense.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Moran. We do really appreciate that you attended and spared your valuable time for us also. And I hope to see you again in the future, maybe. Thank you so much.
Inshallah, we'll see. In the meantime, if you have any output, send me a link or something. And we
of course, yeah, I will. Definitely, I will.
Okay, take care.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.